Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lions Talk with Smoke and Jeremy B. Dan Campbell has some pretty high praise for Levi, which we haven't heard it from Dan Campbell before about Levi, but we had heard all this before, week one last season, from beat writers and fans that were in attendance on how good Levi looked because he looked healthy and was having a good camp. And then we saw the injuries again. I am trying to be as realistic as I can. I want to see it when the bright lights of the regular season happen because I'm not saying that Levi is going to be cut now. I have not said that since week one of OT of the training camp because he's actually been doing exactly what I said he needs to do to stay on the team. Show out this preseason, off season, show out in preseason, and then do it in the regular season. And Moonscar Blade and Matt Henry, welcome in. Thank you for chopping in, guys. Just in a good mood today. It's Buck Your Feelings Friday. Alls I know is Colin Johnson, the 6'6" wide receiver for the Bears last night, saved Brett Ripien from looking worse than he did because he had good coverage on him. They had people draped on him for about 80% of his catches he made. And that saved 4 of them from being a bad pass. In my opinion, you can take it with a grain of salt, but you do got a QB backup battle now. And that's fine. It's good to have a battle at backup. The Lions have a battle at backup because Hendon Hooker's up and down, but yet so is Suckbelt. For every good pass I hear about them doing, I hear bad passes being made. And that is what it is. But at the same time, Suckbelt threw an interception to Rakestraw today. So Rakestraw is doing what he has to do to be the nickelback guy. He doesn't want to be beat out by Mosley or Amit. He wants to be that starting guy. And it's nice to have guys with that dogfight in them as rookies. If they're fighting like that as rookies, imagine what they're going to do later on in their career. I think it's great. The other big news that I heard, and it's big news to me because he's a fan favorite from back in the Stafford Petrasha era. Golden Tate is entering the announcer's booth with Dan Miller and Lomas Brown for home games. And we're going to see him there. I want to see how he does this preseason with them. I think it should be great to see that. Because Lomas Brown is good with Dan Miller, but sometimes the color commentary needs to be added a little more flavor, as Flava Flav would say. It's another great day here, but it's also F Your Feelings Friday. Brett Ripien should be the starter for the Bears and let Caleb Williams sit a year. Seeing how Jim Plunkett is the only Hall of Fame quarterback to win a Heisman in the Hall of Fame, since I got corrected the other day, it's Jim Plunkett. So there's 1 out of 10 in NFL history. The odds are not good. How many Heisman quarterbacks have entered the league? Almost all of them, right? I mean, 6 of them are running backs. One I know for sure is a DB. That's Charles Woodson. So that's 7 of them gone. Yeah, Jim Plunkett. That's 8. I can't remember who the other 2 are. Yeah, Andre Ware. There's another one. No, it's FYF Friday. Fuck your feelings Friday. Start Brett Ripien, bench Tyson Badgett, and put Caleb on the practice squad to develop a year, and you guys will have a great season. You know I'm being facetious. But, everybody's being real hyped on Derice Fontaine and the other guys that have been showing up in camp and worried about the 2 people we don't hear anything about, and that's Khalif Raymond and DPJ. You ever thought that maybe they're auditioning for the 5 and 6 spots to see which cream rises to the top and just saying these guys can make it in the NFL? Because we know DPJ is an effective run blocker. He started to look better at the end of the last season. I'm quite sure he's still working out and doing stuff. He actually flew to California and worked out with Goff to build a rapport there. Maybe Goff said, "Hey, I don't need to build a rapport with these guys. I know what I got in them. Let's see what we got elsewhere to make sure our wide receiver depth is right for the other 2 positions." I hear good things about Fontaine. I hear some good and bad things about Green, and that's about it. Every now and then you might hear Davis or Williams, but you don't hear much in the wide receiver part. That's more about their special teams. So I think it's those 2 fighting for position 6, and everybody else we're hearing about is fighting for position 5. And that's why you're going to see more of them this preseason than you will the guys that have an actual NFL resume, which makes perfect sense to me. I don't want to put Derice Fontaine ahead of Khalif Raymond at wide receiver 3 unless he earns it. And that would be the first time he's on the field in a regular season game and outperforms them. Like I said, I want to see stuff under the big lights of the regular season for everyone that makes our 53-man roster. And the guy that's struggling the most right now on that defensive end room, as much as nobody wants to hear it, is Houston. He shows flashes every now and then that he's doing something right, but he's not having a good camp. It's not looking good for Houston. The other guy that's not looking good at all is that UDFA we signed last year, Chris Smith from Notre Dame. He's looking like a Notre Dame player here, and it's not looking good. He's getting beaten one-on-ones. He can't take on double teams. He's like this year's version of Burrito Jones. All I've heard is decent to good things about Levi, Davenport, Betts, Martin, Wingo, and the list goes on about who I've heard good stuff about, but I hear very little good about Houston and Chris Smith. So they are my first odd men out right now. They are definitely on that bubble. They have to really perform these next few weeks to make the roster. And again, in game, they might do better. Because some people, like I said, they just don't try all in practice, but that matters to Dan Campbell. Because the person that practices good usually plays good in their opinion. And that's why you'll see somebody who has a couple good preseason games but had horrible practices all year not make the team, aka Stephon Gilmore. Ricky Sakata in the chat. Good practice equals to better football is according to Dan Campbell. If you do it well in practice, you'll do it well in game. Has it always worked out that way? Probably about 90% of the time. There's that 10% of people that just don't have the it factor in game time. That it shows. Had to go with the industrial sized cup of coffee this morning. Woke up a little late, missed all the pressers. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But this is an asterisk win for the Bears because the Texans came back. Brett Ripien went out and went 10 of 15, 3 touchdowns. He looked good in that first half. And lo and behold, from the second quarter through the third quarter, when it was done, when they called the game, Texans were making a comeback. Am I saying they'd have won? And it really doesn't matter because the record in the preseason doesn't matter. But you could see the Texans were trying to out scheme, and they outscored them through 2 quarters. That's what I saw. So it's an asterisk win. Congratulations. You won a meaningless football game with the extra football game in preseason. It's funny how people are saying that the Lions are more of a contender than everybody else. Oh, Ricky, I am not as excited for Michigan football this year. I really am not. As much as I hate to say it. And I'm not a bandwagon guy. I won't jump ship, but I'm not as excited to watch them go 9 wins tops. That's what I see. This is a 9-win team. Oh, this just in. Eric Woodward reports that earlier this week, Amon-Ra St. Brown challenged Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs to get 1,000 yards receiving and rushing in the same season, and he will buy him anything once. Gibbs says he's holding him to that. I'm going to break his bank, he told ESPN. He said he might have him buy a house. Woo! That's some steep words from the second year guy. But if there's anybody that can do it, he showed the talent to do it last year. Fred Peterson, good afternoon. It's a great day to be a Lion. One pride. That, of course, the source is Twitter from Eric Woodward. Woodyard, not Woodward, sorry. Four people watching right now. I believe one is on Facebook. No, two are on Facebook. Cool. JB, I really don't get all excited on preseason games. It's not even entertaining, nor will I act like I know everything about the players or who may make the team. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. But I will say, I believe they found their wide receiver 4 or 5 in Colin Johnson last night. I think he emerged great. I want to see him do well. It's not an unpopular opinion. Hell, the last time the Lions went undefeated in a preseason, they didn't win a game in the regular season. I don't give two shits about preseason games other than seeing the depth of talent on the field. That's it. That's what it's for. Especially now that there's only 3 preseason games for 90% of the teams. The only people who get an extra playoff game and they don't use it as a season warm up is the teams that play in the Hall of Fame game. And I'm like, wow, it may be a scrimmage, but wouldn't you rather see the starters play that game and have an interesting preseason game and get them more in game shape with an extra game? I almost would take advantage of that as a coach. I agree, Graham, but it's nice to see how the younger guys compete with another team. 100%. It's just nice to actually be talking football again. We saw a game, but Davis Mills came on for the Texans and went 10 of 13 with a touchdown. I never saw him that accurate against any NFL team before. Granted, it was backups, but still, he had a good showing. I I don't care about practice, Grandizer. It's about seeing the depth on the field. You can make all the practice stuff you want. I'm talking about game time. No, it matters on who's the depth of your roster. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Grandizer. That's what these games are about. It's finding depth for talent behind your starters. Because if you don't find the right depth pieces and an injury happens, your team is screwed. That's what it's about. Yep, Johnson really stood out last night in a meaningless game. You can say that out of his 5 catches, 4 of them probably should have been incompletions the way he was. I know you disagree. I'm telling you why you should give a shit, Grandizer. Well, no shit, most of them be cut. It's a 90-man roster with 53 making it and 17 on the practice squad. I and that's why I said the practice matters to coaches too. It's a combination of both. You have to be able to do it in both positions. And preseason is about finding those guys who can. The ones that can do it in practice and the ones that can do it in a game situation. It's about finding the right depth for your team so when you have injuries, you can still actually win a division. I guess I'll disagree with that statement forever, Grandizer. I don't get that mentality. The record is meaningless, but what those players do on the field is not. The results of the game are meaningless. The way the people play it, from whistle to whistle, in between is not. Is my point. So if you care about the health of your team and longevity of it, and want them to be able to sustain excellence with injuries, those players matter. That's why we talk about wide receivers 4, 5, and 6. That's why we talk about running backs 3 and 4 in a 2 running back set. That's why we talk about who's the fullback on a team that doesn't have one, but they use one 20% of the plays. It makes a difference. It matters about kick return specialists. It matters who's the gunner. It matters who's the personal protector for the punter. It matters about who's returning them. And that's the one thing we saw last night. It looked like the Texans treated it like regular kickoffs. The guy who caught it just ran up the middle every time, right into the teeth of the blockers and the defense. And the Bears looked like they actually schemed a little bit. And we saw what it could equal with great field position because of it. That's another reason why they jumped out big. Yes, but do we need to talk about it every day? It's the only thing to talk about. Find me more topics then. Find me more topics about current football. Matt Henry, I 100% agree with what you just said. Depth is just as important as starters. And we saw that with the Lions last year. At one point, we had 8 players out and we still won a game. never, never mind, Grandizer. You're not going to get what I'm talking about. Forget it. I get it. I get it. You don't fucking care. Position battles matter. And yes, it will be talked about every day on this show because there's not much else out there. I did bring up something else out, and everybody wants to talk about how the game didn't matter. So that's funny. I brought up something that was not preseason football. And that's fine you don't agree with it. Don't keep giving me your opinion that it's opposite mine. Because I acknowledge the fact you said that and I disagreed with you. We can move on, but every time you make a comment it brings the argument back to that. Then don't watch me because I will talk about it every day. Because that's the only thing that's out there for news is what position battles are out there, who's on the bubble. That's the only news I got for the local team. So unless you can find me more, and I gave something that was newsworthy outside of the actual football team and position battles, and no one commented on it. So therefore, I went back to position battles. I run my show the way I want, and I do this every year in the preseason. The difference is, but you keep taking it back there. You just did it again. I said, then drop it and talk about the other thing I talked about, but you went back to the same topic. You take me back there because I follow my chat. I give credence to my chat. It's one of the reasons why everybody loves me. Is because I actually listen to my chat. I read them online. Right. And I don't see you here every day. I see you here about 2, 3 times a week, and I get it. But to complain about that's what I'm talking about, I don't like it. Because you put another one up. Because I go read my chats. Tell me another topic you want to talk about. Don't bring up the same thing. I brought up how we added somebody to the announcer booth and no one even reacted to that. They reacted to the fact I started talking about the game last night, which does matter for the Bears and the Texans for preseason because it's about their depth on their team. But, you know, so I wasn't talking about the Lions' depth. I was talking about another game and you gave me an opinion on it. And I understand that. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but everything comes back to the same thing. So Golden Tate was added to the announcer booth for home Lions games this preseason with Dan Miller and Lomas Brown. I hope he does a good job with them. I talked about this and everybody glazed over it like it was a nothing burger. They went to dogging me because I'm talking about a preseason game. When no one reacted, I will talk. What are my predictions for starting D line? Right now, it's either Davenport or on Wuzariki opposite Hutch. Reader or whoever's next in line at DT2, Aleem at DT1, and Hutchinson. And then that's for starting D line. It'll be Levi or Marcus Davenport. Well, Lions fans care about it. The booth. I think it might be something new, something add a little excitement to it. I mean, Dan Miller's exciting when he gets excited, but he doesn't add a lot of color on the plays in between. Lomas Brown does a good job with them. I like that chemistry, and adding somebody else may build some more chemistry for the fans outside. Because one thing I've heard from fan bases outside of Detroit, they think they're boring when there's nothing happening. So it's to maintain viewership locally. There's home home commentators and away commentators. Golden Tate was a fan favorite while he was here, especially after Megatron retired, because him and Marvin Jones was all we had until Kenny Drop-A-Day showed up. Everybody forgets that first game against the Cardinals when we drafted Kenny Galladay, the first half he was awful. He dropped about 4 passes. Fans were booing him. They were they were yelling about getting rid of him after a half of football. And then the second half, he came out and played like gangbusters, and everybody's going all day, Galladay. I always liked GT while he was here. He was always exciting to watch. I've never heard him do commentary, but I hope he does well. Thanks, Fred. I feel the same way. I just like interacting with my chat. And I lost viewers because I argued with somebody. Oh, well, I don't care. I'm at that point anymore. You know, the only time you hear anything about Hooker is when he has a bad day. Are the beat writers scared of fans being happy about Hooker? Or is it something else going on here? Because I don't get it. We should all be happy if Hooker has a good day out there or a bad day. The only one that seems to report his good days is Jeff Risman and Tim Twentyman. The rest of them all just glaze over it. Oh, he was okay. No, oh, he dropped 2 dimes to Maurice Alexander, and he dropped 1 to Derice Fontaine and to Caden Davis, a couple to Parker Hess. We don't hear about those days when he goes like 7 of 10 and 2 touchdowns. But we hear about when he throws a pick. You know, beat writers are so scared to write anything positive about anyone other than our starters. It isn't funny when it comes to the quarterbacks. And I don't get it. I don't get that mentality at all. Right. Hooker is going to have good days and bad days at camp. It is his first camp. But what I'm saying is the good days aren't reported about as much as the bad days are, Chicken Nugget. Thanks for joining the chat. And it's hard this time. They said there just isn't much going on. Football is just getting started and nobody is getting arrested or throwing their girlfriend out of a third story window. But that report was proven false, but he still got in trouble. He still got an arrest warrant issued. That was alleged. And Isaiah Bugs doing 2 years of hard labor in an internment prison camp is just desserts for what he did to his dog. I can't wait to see what they throw the book at him for his girlfriend, because that's coming. That court date hasn't happened yet. I understand. Yeah, the positives needs to be more out there. Right. I mean, when I can go on the Detroit Lions website and see passes and they won't show you who it is, but you can tell by the difference in the style of the way the pass is thrown. They won't tell you, oh, Hooker delivered that. Exactly, Chicken Nug. Only way to know is to get him out there. He's going to learn from those mistakes. 100%. All I know is Rakestraw and Arnold are not playing with the threes, and Rakestraw getting a pick, playing outside, means that's the other QB that they don't like to mention anything good or bad about, because it does not bode well if they talk about a bad day for Sudfeld when they're trying to dog Hooker, saying he might not be the QB2. That's a narrative that I don't like being thrown out there. Now, do you get what I'm getting at there? It's funny, you know, Hooker throws a pick to Brendan Joseph, and that's front page news on the Lions stuff. But Sudfeld throws a pick to Rakestraw, and it's about what a great play Rakestraw made, not what a bad pass Nate Sudfeld made. Now, do you get what I'm getting at there? Uh, there's a double narrative that's going on, and I think they're just trying to keep from adding fire to everybody for anything. That's what I'm getting at. Yep, Rakestraw's definitely coming up on the Heisman and horizon, and I think he's gonna be the guy that might actually win that nickelback spot. It's gonna be him or Mosley, because I hear more good things about them than about a Meek Robertson. Mick Robertson had a nice day in the one-on-ones where he broke up a pass from Goff. They actually talked about it, and I was like, "Ooh, great! That's what I want to hear. I want to hear he's doing good against our starter, because he's going to be facing other NFL starters." Everybody should be happy when you hear somebody on defense is winning at their position. because especially with our secondary, because our secondary was so poor last year. Smoking Dad enters the chat. How you doing, Dad? Bakershaw moving to the nickel could be a sweet move. Yep. Is there another second string quarterback that has gotten the love Hooker has gotten in a mass produced jersey that has yet to play a single snap? Rookies projected to start don't count. No. As a matter of fact, I think Hooker was third in rookie jerseys last year. Hello, Jeremy. Next man up league. The depth is key. Smoking Dad says he's doing good. Can't complain. Or did they just want to put Hooker on a jersey? Well, that was Fred. That was to increase the amount of jersey sales on 6 Mile. So those girls will be happy to have their occupation on their back. I like being funny. You know that. I will make those jokes every day. It is time to do the station break to let you know where you're watching this show from.
Here locally in the community, make sure y'all go check out Kneecap Body by Jeremy Jones.
Oh, Chicken Nugget, love that comment about the Hooker jersey. All right. I have been saying that for a year. Fred, I don't know if Fred was here back when I first started saying that, but I know Joseph Austin was, uh, a few others. I have a football card from the 70s of a guy named Fair Hooker. Bet his prices were fair then. Honest day's work for an honest day's job. Ba-dum-bum. Oh, haven't seen Buddy Conquito yet, but when you wake up late and you lose track of time, you got to set up the show at the last minute because it didn't go through when you did it the night before. I set the show up at 3 a.m. and then I was like, "Oh my god, my topics are gone. The show isn't even in the chat." I had to create it like right now. But I am so happy to be doing this, reacting with you guys with what your comments. So now we're to the ask the host phase. But just remember, do one thing for me because it makes it easy on me. Is leave time for answers. Ask me anything you want. I love the what Fred said, and right now I gave the right now answer because we're only in our second week of camp. We haven't even seen a game played. We haven't seen the joint practices yet, which all start this weekend. It is August 2nd. We had a game last night, 21-17, ended short just before the end of the third quarter due to rain and lightning. They called it while the Texans were charging back. And yes, you know why I hate anything being shortened and cut down like that? Because it was actually turning into a good football game. We were seeing the depth of the talent between the two teams, and it looked like the second string of Chicago was a little better than the second string of the Texans, but the third string looked like they were balling out to me. So those are guys that are the depth for those teams, and it matters to those teams and that coaching staffs and those fans. But Colin Johnson looks like the wide receiver 4 or 5 that the Bears need, a red zone contested catch guy. And that could prove to be problems later on if their O-line is good. I mean, both teams only played 10% of their starting roster on the first drive and then none after that. Austin Booker, their rookie, had a couple of nice plays with the third string defense, so that was good to see. Sorry, JB, I'm back to work. I won't be commenting, but I'll be here listening. I appreciate that, Fred. Don't forget to throw a like out there. Get the likes up on this video. Because the likes are what makes a difference. It doesn't matter about the views matter for later on because views happen all the time. I've had shows where I've only had 10 people watching and then turn around 2 hours later and it's got 150 views. And then after a day it had 300 views. Those episodes happen. And I'm sorry if I go a little off the deep end about what I have to report and I can't really change it because that's all there is to report when you do a daily show. It is what it is. But everybody complaining about the injuries, I still haven't heard any details on Sion Vaki's injury or how long he'll be out. So I'm waiting to see what that is. I keep refreshing. Is there a determining factor of who plays in the Hall of Fame game? So far, it's looked like a playoff team versus one of the worst teams in the league every year. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to overhype or underhype it, but that's what it looks like. Every year we get a playoff team and a team who missed that was in the bottom half, picking in the top 12. Hey, RXJ in the chat. Good to see you, brother. All right, 4 hours ago, Pride of Detroit and everybody else gets a positive injury update on Sion Vaki. I finally get to see something. I typed that in 2 hours ago and nothing came up. It was kind of irritating. So Sion Vaki will not be out long term, so that should not affect him making the roster. Because so far, I have him penciled in as running back either 3 or 4. It really depends between Zonovan Knight and Craig Reynolds on who's going to emerge out of that. And both of them do special teams, so you can't say that's going to be the determining factor. It'll be play on the field in the preseason games. That's what I see happening. I think Sion Vaki's a lock. That's just me. I heard everything good about him. Well, if you think about it, didn't Andre Johnson, and then he was a bear, but there was some Bears that made it into. So yeah, that could be a determining factor. But yet they've never had the Lions in the Hall of Fame game, and we had Lions go in 2 years in a row. So it is what it is. And I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about 21 and 22. But Andre Johnson, he deserved it. Isn't he the first one of the Texans to make it? Uh, we really don't have. Yep, That is right. He is in the Hall of Fame now. So now the Texans have one in. Bates missed a few, but it's early and he will be good for the season. And remember, they practice outside. Where did Bates struggle with the Panthers? It was outside. The fact he's making any of them from over 60 yards is a testament that he worked on that. He's made them from 52 all the way back to 64 so far outside. And doing that outside is amazing because what can he do indoors? We might be able to make it to the 50 and then boom, 60-yard field goal. I want him to let him to try a 67-yarder so we can get the taste of the Justin Tucker kick out of our mouth. Because if he makes it, we're gold. And I don't even care if it's in the preseason. I would let him try it then more than anything. And it looks like they're bringing out the punt. Wait, that's Jake Bates, and and Fox is going to be holding. Just saying. No, not a, there really isn't anybody out there that I'd want to fight against him right now, unless they find another UFL guy. I just don't see anybody out there as a free agent right now that I think could give him good competition. Robbie Gould doesn't have the leg he used to. It's one of the reasons why he's not a 49er anymore, and they went to Moody last year. So it is what it is. If we see somebody get cut, Riley Patterson was even picked up off of waivers by the Commanders, so he's not an option. James Turner is still there, and they haven't even played a preseason game in Green Bay. They got to see what they got in him. That's the guy I wish we would have kept, to be honest. I'd care less what they say about the money badger. I didn't like him. There's a reason they didn't trust him outside. The surprising cuts right now, if all the rumors are true, is probably DPJ on the offense, maybe Craig Reynolds or Zonovan Knight, because we're only going to carry 4, which they'll be going to the practice squad. Coyote Awasika has been up and down in camp. I want to hear how Ike Becker and the new guy Jake Burton is doing before I make a decision on O-line. Um, Defensive line, I think it's James Houston. He's been having such a down year. I think it's inevitable that he's the only one that deserves to be cut. I He can't beat one-on-ones. He doesn't have the elite bend. He isn't getting off like he used to, which I said all are things that could happen from that broken bone in his ankle on his push-off leg. It's a bigger issue than anybody realized, and it's showing this off season. And I'm not even trying to be a jerk about it. Um, Linebacker wise, Ben Neiman and the other guy we brought in, they've done nothing to help their case to jump up with JRM and company. Yep, Campbell is really high on Fontaine, but again, we're not really using Khalif Raymond or DPJ with the one. So I think they're actually competing for wide receiver 5 and 6. And that's between Fontaine, Green, and company. And right now, I think Fontaine and Green I've heard more positive about than any other 2 receivers out of that group. Occasionally, you'll hear a Caden Davis signing. Occasionally, you'll hear something about Isaiah Williams. Occasionally, you will hear something about someone else. But for the most part, you're hearing great things about DPJ. I mean, I'm not DPJ, DeRee Fontaine and Antoine Green. So I think that's going to be our six because they're not using DPJ and Khalif Raymond that much with the ones. They come in when people get tired with the twos and threes, which means they trust them, in my opinion, because Khalif Raymond was clutch before he went down midseason and didn't even get a chance to play in the playoffs. And if Raymond was out there, we probably would have had at least one of those 2 fourth down catches. Bad part is there was JMO 5 yards behind with nobody behind him, wide open behind Reynolds when he had 2 guys right there, and Goff chose that spot instead of JMO 5 yards out at the exact same moment. I'm just glad that I hear that Goff and JMO are building a rapport. They're looking better this offseason than they ever had, and I think that's great for the Lions. I think it's great for the development of JMO. I think it's great for our team development. Say what you want. Hearing JMO and Goff building a rapport and making deep ball catches, and I'm seeing a better deep ball in practice than I've seen out of Jared Goff ever. And this is after the pads went on too. So does he still wobble one every now and then? Yeah, and I think that's more due to size of his hands than his actual arm strength. Because in 2018, we saw deep passes being made by Goff that a lot of QBs couldn't put on a dime. And now you're starting to see it again. Even though it's wobbling, it gets there. So I don't think it's arm strength. I think it has to do with the reduced hand size. And this is him 3 interceptions so far with the second team. Let's be fair. Guess who's quarterbacking the second team? Nate Sudfeld. Newsflash: he's worse than Hooker. You can brag up Ennis Rakestraw as much as you want. As long as Sudfeld or Hooker's passing to him and not Goff, it looks worse. He'll be the nickelback at best. Mark my words, as undone. But Mosley's having a great camp against the ones, doing pass breakups. I think he's had 2 interceptions. Arnold has had 3. But you don't want to mention anything about Arnold's 3 because they're all versus Goff. So I don't want the narratives about a guy playing with this. Gibbs had a kick return touchdown today too. Yeah, did anybody pay attention to that? The kickoff rules in place last night. Both teams neglected to accept any of the penalties for guys moving too fast or this, that, or the other because everybody's learning and it's preseason. It doesn't matter. There was 3 penalties on the Texans and 2 on the Bears, and neither team accepted any of those penalties on the kickoff right now. The one thing I noticed is that once the wind started to pick up just before the storm got bad, the Bears punter, because you're allowed the 13th guy now instead of having to take somebody from the kicking team because of how they line up. The punter comes out and holds the ball, and their only job is to grab the tee and run off the field. Very little because Gibbs is going to be used more as a running back than a wide receiver. He's just going to be used at wide receiver more. There's a big difference in that, T-Bone Lokes. Gibbs is still one of our best running backs. So I think they're still going to run with 6 wide receivers because somebody has to be able to take on special teams duty. And right now it's Khalif Raymond. And now that Gibbs is emerging as a guy. Oh my God. I like the fact because it brings back the kick return. is undone. My God, you are way all over the place on to bring out negative news on anybody you can, and I'm about done with it. I said, if you can't talk nice about our players or not come in here and give every negative report you see every day there is one, I'm sick of it. But you brag up somebody that made interceptions against a quarterback 2 or 3. I'm glad he's having a good camp. It's great for our secondary, 100%. But I'm not calling him better than anybody that's considered in front of him because there's a reason for that. Jake Bates is all we got. So accept him or don't. With 14 games indoors and he didn't miss indoors at Ford Field, I'm good with it. Everybody forgets we only got 3 outdoor games and 2 are in December. 1 is in October. I understand, but there's nobody out there worth bringing in. Nobody. Nobody that has the distance of even Badgley, let alone him. Let's bring in the 40-year-old that can make everything from 45 in, but not kick anything deeper than that and go through the same things we did everywhere any other time we were longer than 40 yards out from the field goal. It'll be more fourth downs. At least if you got a guy that can kick it that long, they'll try it. That's my point. Of course, beat writers are going to suggest it, but there's nobody out there worth bringing in. If there was, we'd be doing it. And to me, any 8 of 14, okay. He's still over 50, 60%. That's 60%. 62%. That's still better than Kickalicious, and we made him a starter that year when there was guys that did better than him in the preseason. Remember that? Let's go back in time and talk about the horrible kicking we had after Hanson retired while we waited to get Prater. And now we've done the same thing again. Because we overpaid Romeo Aquaro when we should have paid Prater. And DPJ might be a cut. But at the same time, he's not working out with the ones. He's relieving people on the 2s and 3s. One thing he did say he's still happy with them about is his run blocking. So don't say he didn't say anything positive about DPJ. Just they're not using him with the ones, just like they're not using Raymond. That's why you're hearing about everybody else. They're not even they're barely hitting the field. Very rarely do you hear anything about Khalif Raymond right now because he's not on the field. Very rarely do you hear anything about DPJ because he's not on the field. He talked about one-on-ones. And yes, DPJ failed in a one-on-one situation is what they were talking about because the one-on-ones are different. Right now, they're testing for every depth piece they can because they want to make sure this roster has the best depth of talent they've ever had on the 53 plus the practice squad in case of injury. And that makes 100% sense to me because I listened to the whole thing and what he talked about in the beginning of that presser before he got into the player parts. Yes, it is that time. It's time to talk about our sponsors and our favorite one. Fuck the Packers, because it is Fuck Your Feelings Friday. Put it in the chat. Davey got ahead of it. Let's have some more. Let's get to the preseason games. Let's get to the joint practices because I want to hear the reports after them starting August 5th when we start going against the Giants for the 5th and 6th. Go Bears didn't play last night, JB. I knew he wouldn't. And our other sponsor, the one that pays me the most because they paid for their spot, period. It is Brandon's Tire at the corner of Grand Traverse and West Atherton Road, right here in Flint, Michigan. Flint, where the water's shit. But the tires are good when you come to Brandon Service. Used tires starting at $40, depending on condition and size. And new tires, call to get your quote, 810-233-8230. Talk to George, Red, or myself. Oh, man. I'm in a rough couple of days. I ain't gonna lie. But you know what? I come in here and I do this. I do this because I love the team. I do this because I love talking news. I'm sorry that I got irate with people, but I'm getting sick of the negative side of things. No, the offer is mention the ad and that Smoking Jeremy B sent you, and you get $10 off. Dad, should we trade back for Jerry? The views and opinions of Jeremy Ballrick Jr. does not reflect that of Kneecap Biting with the Motor City Lions, nor is I, Smoking Jeremy B, the original Jeremy Ballrick. If he was actually Jeremy Ballrick Jr., he would have someone else's photo than mine. Just saying. Oh, it's a great day to talk football. It's a great day to be this side of the sun and upright. Tune in tonight for the Lions Fan Cave chat at 9 p.m., where I'm going to try to come up with better things to talk about, so I don't get complained that we talked about position battles all day. That's a good deal. If I need new tires, I'll come out to you. 100% RXA. It'd be good to meet you. I love doing this show. I do have fun with it. But some of the negativity just wears on me after a while, and I get overreactive to it, and I shouldn't. I'm not trying to offend people. I'm not trying to push people away, but I just get sick of people telling me what I should report or not. If it was easy, you'd be producing and doing your own show. That's my opinion. The news has slowed down to a crawl. The other big news is the NFL won their appeal against the Sunday ticket case because the judge literally said there is no way you could have the jury accept without the perjured statements from two of the guys that gave testimony. So that's food for thought. Have a great day, everybody. Try to be a better person than you were the day before.